Hello there, Global Nine. This is going to be the last lesson of the medieval time period before we take a test. This one is on the medieval church. If you'll follow along with me and watch this wonderful video, you can stop it if you need to, fill in your study guide. And again, make sure that you're filling it in so that you're ready to use it on the test, which we'll have later in the week. Right, the medieval church, as the church grew in power in Europe, we find that it's Charlemagne who is going to be the Holy Roman Emperor, and he's going to be the leader of that Frankish kingdom. All right, and the church that we're talking about here is the Roman Catholic Church. So it's that one branch of Christianity up until the 800s. Took a lot of centuries for this faith to spread, but once it does, it spreads all the way from the area of Hamburg here in what used to be Germany, and it makes its way to Brittany, which is on the west coast of France, all the way down to Barcelona, which is a part of Spain, and then obviously, because it is also going to have an influence, it'll border up against the Roman Catholic Church and what was the church's empire, the seat of which was in Rome itself. Right, so you've got these four major geographic areas. We look at how big it gets, how it spreads, how it moves to the east, and obviously it bumps right up and into the Umayyad Caliphate, which means that you're going to have a conflict between the Muslims that are a part of this area and the Christians that are a part of the area to the north. Right? But in this time period, again, it's the Roman Catholic Church, which is the most powerful force in Europe. Right? And this, at this point, is more powerful than even Charlemagne himself. If you get to a smaller area and you're talking about what a church looks like, we're really talking about the parish priest or the church priest, and we're in a small village area. The sacraments are going to be the way that these priests are going to try to make sure that everybody participates in the church. These are the sacred rites of the church. Some of the sacraments are things like confirmation, going for communion, which is the Holy Eucharist in the Catholic Church, things like baptism when you're younger, the idea that when you do pass away, it's called extreme unction, and that would be the rites of the dead. You can take holy orders and become a priest or a nun, or you can get married, and then that's the rite of matrimony. And then all along the way, penance is confession in the Catholic Church. And this is how the sacred rites are participated in. The whole idea about the village priest is that he really formulates the fabric of everyday life. So it's everybody participating in these particular rites, not just Sunday, but at all times. All right, the last of things is obviously you want to be buried in sacred ground if you're a Christian belonging to the Roman Catholic Church. Church buildings can be simple and were simple in the beginning, but they still took a great deal of pride and care in how they built things. All right, there's a lot of relics. That would mean things that are remaining from people who participated in early religious situations. Sometimes they would be called the rites of the saints. They would have relics from those. It would be a small piece of clothing. It could be a string. And again, anybody who was considered to be a martyr, a saint, or a holy person, these kind of objects could be held and kept within these smaller churches as well as the larger ones. The only way that you can get this kind of a structure built, obviously it's built out of stone. That's expensive, is you're going to have masons that can do it. You need somebody who's an architect. So this is going to be dependent on everybody participating. In the church itself, all people were required to tithe. Tithing was a tax. Now that tithe and that tax was supposed to equal 1/10 of your yearly income. If you had no wealth, then what you did, you were the stonemason who donates the time to do the stones. All right, and you are going to give your skills instead. So it's either 1/10 of your income as a part of a donation yearly, or the skills in time. And this is how the church itself functioned and how it stayed able to promote itself and function even in small villages. The bigger part of the Roman Catholic Church picture, was when you started to have isolation for cloister. And cloister would mean monastery life, and within the monasteries, these would be mostly a hierarchy of priests in one, monks, again, it would be the term, and then in the convents, you would have nuns. if you're looking at how these things start, some of them started very, very isolated. They're up on the top of some mountain and cliffs because really they wanted to be isolated from the everyday people. This is different than your parish priest. This is your priest, or this is the monk who lived in silence. And they found a closer knit way as Roman Catholic priests or as Roman Catholic monks to communicate with God. The basic structure of a convent also looks the same, or a monastery. Some of the monasteries obviously are much more elaborate. This would be a basic design. You'd have a center courtyard, and this would be an outyard. This is where, if you were going outside and you lived in a monastery, you would go into this area here to be outside. You would not go out into the outer world. Right? You really are wanting to stay isolated. The isolation could be very extreme. This is an example of a cliff-top monastery, and inside of these tiny little holes here were where the monks stayed, and they isolated not only from the outside world but from each other. Right? And this is not a Roman Catholic idea. This is also an Eastern Orthodox idea. So where Christianity went, or Buddhism in other areas, you also find this isolation of monks, right, separate from the people that they're living with. All right, if you would, fill in your note sheet. I'm not going to talk too much about this one. I want you to copy this information down, make sure you understand where it's coming from. All right, when we talk about this, however, we're talking about St. Benedict, and these are the rules that St. Benedict promoted. All right, he was considered to be a very important monk around 530 CE. Right, and these are the three promises that any monk or any nun took. First is absolute obedience. Second is poverty. And the third is chastity or purity. This is where they would stay removed. They would not participate in the sacrament of matrimony, and therefore they would not be involved with anyone on an intimate level. One of the things that Benedict believed in is that in order for people to really reach their full potential as Christians, or if they were monks or nuns, is that they really had to work. They had to do physical labor. And so you find that many of these people worked in the fields. They cleared and drained the fields, and then they were the ones who experimented with different crop types. And so they started to find ways to make better crops. And even later on, you're going to find that they're going to make things like, not necessarily chemical fertilizer, but they're going to be the ones to know to put nitrates into the soil using natural nitrates, like cow manure. Monks and nuns gave food and lodging to travelers such as pilgrims, and anyone that was stopping on the way to the holy city of Jerusalem or a holy shrine was given food and lodging overnight, right, for free. Although you could make a donation, again, that would be giving alms or it would be a part of your tithes. The other piece is that it was their responsibility to go out and help the poor and the sick and make sure that they, later on in these time periods, they were really responsible for setting up some of the first schools for children. Okay, feel free to come back to this slide and pause it if you want to. I'm going to go ahead a little bit on the next piece. Right, as these places become center for learnings, they're isolated centers for learning. And what they do is they keep a lot of things alive. But if they don't agree with some of the things that are being published, then they won't be copied. So you're going to find that some works are going to be missing over time. But this is an example of one of the pieces that comes out of Ethiopia. All right, Ethiopia was also a Christian nation. So you're going to find this piece right here is going to be reflective. If you were to look at it, it would be written in Latin, but some of the objects along the outsides that are decorative would look much more like they come from the Ethiopian or African tradition. This one, again, is a little bit different because this one is going to come from Europe. Right, in the 2nd century, what you have is a whole new technique for making books. And what they start to do is they process, not paper, but a new form of leather, which was very thin. Okay, and you could write on both sides. Because of that, you could create books, right and left. Right, and what you have here is the development of a word that's called parchment. Right. In other situations, if it's made out of something that's really, really fine, it's called vellum. All right, so you have V-E-L-L-U-M. Sorry, I'm trying to write with the mouse. All right, vellum is even finer parchment, but again, a little bit harder because it is calves. right? But that's how they made the original writing materials. So they're not using papyrus, they're not using stone. They're literally using leather that is finely, finely, finely produced. Examples of some of the ornateness that come out. If you see these pieces, this is the Book of Kells. This comes directly from a Celtic tradition that would be out of the island of Ireland. And if you go, and that'll be part of your homework, is to try and find me some more examples of this. These things would be copied. A scriptorium would look very much like this. These would be monks whose whole daily job in honoring their God as Roman Catholic monks would be to copy works of art, okay, written works. And again, some of them, a lot of the Greek comedies are going to disappear because the Roman Catholic monks didn't necessarily agree with the kind of humor that comes through, because it's very earthly, it's very secular, it's very much about the world. Okay, and again, if you're watching this, you can see that the church is inside itself, isolated with inside itself, providing guidance with inside itself for people who are on the outside looking in until Sundays, and then they're inside looking out at the secular world. All right, last piece. Thanks for looking at all this. Again, if you need to play it again, if it went too fast, it's only going to take you about 11 minutes. You need to go out and study these notes tonight, because I am going to give you a quick quiz on the medieval church tomorrow in class. As a bonus for that, you go out and see if you can print in color another picture from the Book of Kells that's different from the ones I've got here. If you bring it to class with you tomorrow, we'll attach it and use it as your bonus. Right, have a great night. If you have any questions, go out on the website, send me an email if you weren't able to do this. I'll provide you with some time tomorrow, obviously, if you weren't able to do this. You're not hearing this right now. But if you're having a problem with this, email me. Email a friend, or have somebody email it that was able to get the program. Night. See you in the morning.